Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy Podcast. I'm Ani Anderson.
And I'm Brian Trzaskos. Join us as we explore the science
and art of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools.
Strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional.
Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence.
If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started. Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy Podcast. Here we are for episode 100.
We made it all the way.
We made it to 100.
100.
Can you imagine? We've been sitting here. We sat next to each other 100 times.
Yeah, 100 coffee breaths.
100 coffee breaths.
I used to make fun of Brian, especially when we were first recording, that we have to sit so close to each other to do this podcast that when he would come with coffee breath, I thought I was going to die. But I made it 100 times.
And I love the coffee.
I know you do.
Half calf, under caffeinated, just enough. All right, here we are for episode 100. It's pretty cool.
You're looking pretty good for 100, Brian.
Yeah, so are you.
Thank you.
So Somatic Coaching Academy is looking pretty good
all right.
for 100. Awesome.
It really is.
So today, what are we chatting about today? This is kind of a cool topic.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do I compromise?
Oh,
Okay,
I
paused right there because I knew your eye was going to twitch.
Did.
When I said that, but you actually,
I'm going to stop myself.
Let out a breath of something. Wasn't fresh air.
Start again.
Okay. How do I compromise without feeling like I'm giving up too much of myself?
I'm so glad we're talking about this.
Yeah. I remember when we first met and we combined our businesses. I think one of the first memorable things I heard you say was, "I hate to compromise." And I thought to myself, "Who did I just get into business with?"
Did I say that?
Yes, you're very just like kind of like you are now. You're like, this whole topic of compromise really gets your hackles up, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be interesting," because I grew up on compromise.
Did you?
Right? And I'm not saying that was a good thing or a bad thing, by the way. I'm not going to defend compromising, but I grew up compromising a lot.
Why?
Just my where I was in the birth order,
middle child,
the situations, just the life situations, right? I compromised a lot of myself, my values, what I wanted, all that kind of stuff.
Keep the peace.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yep. So
I'm an only child.
I remember, so when I remember we met and you said, "Hey, compromise," I'm like, uh-oh. Because
and yet here we
are, right?
14 years later.
I've learned a lot.
I thought you were going to tell the story about one of the first therapists that we had. We tried therapy a few times.
Oh.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
And we tried a new therapist, and it was session 1, 5 minutes in, I think, after she said, "Hi, how are you? My name is," and tell me like where you live. And then she said something about how you're going to have to compromise. And I was like, that's it. She's
done.
Fired.
We're done.
Goodbye.
We're done. Bye-bye. Okay. And I was like, wait a second. I want Ani to learn to compromise. And I was like,
nope.
Wasn't going to work. Okay. So we got to go to the dictionary here to start with, right? Because what are we talking about when we talk about compromise?
Be the Somatic Coaching Academy Podcast.
Without a dictionary reference. And I'm sure we have bell curve of listeners. Some are muting us right now going, "I don't care about the definition." And there's others that are like, "I can't wait for the definition."
Right, it's got the definition. Yeah. Oh, yay.
Yeah, so it's okay. All right, so here we go. Definition is very telling, actually, when it comes to the idea of compromise.
Deep breath already.
Okay, so an agreement or settlement of a dispute that is reached by each side making concessions.
Oh, this is so hard to listen to, Brian.
Okay, so that's
all right.
That's one step one of the definition.
Okay.
Another one is kind of the same theme: settle a dispute by mutual concession.
Same thing. Concessions.
Okay. Oh, and then this last one was like really a accept standards that are lower than is desirable.
See, you know why I can't compromise now, right? Yeah, like excellence is a value of mine, and I'm not going to make concessions for excellence. This is like, I will not do it. But of course, the title of this episode is How Do I Compromise Without Feeling? So I have a feeling that we're going to talk about not
Well,
compromise.
actually, we are actually going to kind of debunk compromise here for a second and show that there's really no way to win when you experience compromise.
Because it means everybody has to give something up.
Exactly. So, yeah. So, like the compromise idea is, I think a lot of people talk about wanting to compromise, to your point. A lot of couples work and therapy talks about compromise,
Let's talk
right? We
about
talk about
why.
compromise, all those kinds of things. So, we need to flush this out first to kind of talk about how compromise doesn't work, actually.
Well, can we talk about why people think they want to
Sure.
compromise? Why do you think they want to compromise?
Well, I think people want to compromise to avoid a fight,
Sure.
not rock the boat,
Hmm.
just like get on with it, get through with it. I think it just, for a lot of people, at least in my personal experiences, the reason I compromised myself, accepted lower standards,
Sure.
was just to avoid more pain,
Oh, interesting. That makes sense to avoid more pain.
more
Hmm.
perceived pain,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Because it's really perceived. Because when you get in a habit of compromising, what you do is you set up a cycle of more pain, actually, because you're accepting lower and lower standards, which
Right.
is going to actually in the long run create more pain. So what you're doing when you
Interesting.
compromise is you're avoiding short-term pain,
Hmm.
but you're actually setting up longer-term pain.
I think the way that used to, my perspective on compromise used to be that if we could compromise, we could both get what we wanted. But that never seemed to
Correct.
happen
Yeah.
because compromise inherently does not allow us to completely get what we want. And so it sets up this perpetual disappointment, which, by the way, I'm programmed to have
Mm.
disappointment.
Okay.
So that was a program I needed to keep running in my subconscious. And so expecting that both of us were going to get what we wanted during a
Okay.
compromise actually allowed me to continue my conditioned disappointment.
So do you think that's why you were so kind of reflexively against compromise, is
I
because
do.
it would set you up for disappointment
I
to have
think
that experience?
by the time I got together with you, I'm in my mid 30s. I've already had, life kind of slap me around a little bit, knock me off my pedestal. And I think at that point in my life, I was really taking a stand for myself to have more of what I wanted. I think I had been taking care of other people and bowing down to what other people wanted and doing what other people wanted and following other people's leads for a long time. And I was ready to take more of a stand for what I wanted. Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's part of the reason I was so defended against it.
Yeah, yeah. So, so just compromise from a let's say a relational kind of. It's all relational. Or compromise is either you're compromising between two people, right? You could be compromising between two organizations. You could be compromising between yourself and the external circumstances. So, compromise always includes kind of um, uh, two of something, at least two of something.
Yeah.
And I think what we're really fleshing out here on is that compromise is always about accepting a lower standard or conceding something, which
Correct.
means a loss. So compromise, if we're seeking compromise, and really we're always doing is we're seeking a lose-lose.
Well, the thing is that, yeah, that doesn't go along with the natural laws,
Correct.
is the thing, because the natural laws say that there's always an opportunity. So, just to use the lose lose scenario, and another, kind of opposite experience is win win. If there's an opportunity, there must always be a win. And I can't possibly have a win where there's not a win for you. It just doesn't go along with the natural laws. There must always be a win win solution everywhere.
Yes, yeah. So I just kind of pull this back for a second because this can
Yeah.
get really kind of
Deep quick.
deep quick, right? So we can look at situations where there are lose-lose situations. And I think that's when we're seeking mutual compromise. That's actually what we're seeking.
Sure.
We're seeking for both parties to give up something. And I think I think compromise in that regard works, actually doesn't work, but works kind of when both parties
Are willing to give
are
up something.
willing to give up something of the same value.
of the same value.
right?
That's very well said.
Because if you're
Yeah.
seeking compromise, but then nobody likes to lose, by the way.
Mm-mm.
So if you're in a negotiation, and you could be negotiating between yourself and yourself, by the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or yourself and somebody else, or yourself and the environment, or yourself in the world. But if both sides have to be willing to give up something the same value, if they don't, then you have like lose not so much, which actually almost becomes like a win lose, which
Yes, it does, which
sets
breeds
up
resentment and all that
resentment and all
stuff.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So I think as soon as we start to even seek compromise at all, we're actually setting ourselves up for a problem.
agree.
Because again, to your point, it's not based in the natural laws.
Right. So there's a different way to perceive
Yes.
going about having a, what do we say, conflict or disagreement or a misunderstanding or something like that. There's another way to perceive that event right off the bat. And that would be that it's an opportunity,
Yeah.
first of all. And as soon as that is the perception, you start to set yourself up for the natural laws to be at play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you see it as an opportunity, and then you start to, and then you can start to see how the laws go in it to be available to the information that there must be a win-win solution.
Yeah. So there must be a solution where both parties gain something.
Right.
Okay. So both parties
So
gain
now we're
something.
talking about gain instead of loss. And I also want to bring up, as we're talking about win-win, that it's never just a win-win. It's always a win-win-win.
Well, let's pause for a second
Okay.
there, okay? Because it's really comes to how you decide to do this.
Okay.
I actually think there's limitations to win-win,
Say more.
okay? To just the bilateral win-win.
Okay.
There's actually limitations to that also. Because if we're in a win-win or a gain-gain situation, right? So you have win-lose or gain-loss kind of thing. Win is a gain, essentially. People are thinking they're gaining something.
Right.
So you can go into a situation where you have two parties, and even if both parties agree they want to pursue a win-win or a gain-gain, because they don't always, you know. I've worked with a client who had a very difficult situation with another party, and he wanted to seek a win-win. The other party didn't.
Right.
The other party wanted him to lose.
Right.
So they were not interested in a win-win.
Sure.
Right? They were interested in him conceding and them winning. So you got to kind of find navigate how to navigate all that is a whole different world. But let's assume that both parties decide that they want to pursue a win-win or a gain-gain. Now, there also must be a perception that both parties gain the same thing in value. Because if we're in a negotiation and we both say, yes, win-win, but then I perceive you gained more than I did, that's also going to breed resentment. That becomes a win-lose.
So how do you solve for the fact that the other person might not have the same perspective as you?
That gets a little more kind of dicey, right? And if they don't want a win-win solution, then the best way to perceive from there is for you to hold the possibility of something gaining for everyone, and hold the possibility that they may see it at some point in time, not try to take it away from them, but also offer it to them, but then they have a choice whether or not they take it. But don't let that change how you proceed in the win-win, how you proceed in seeing the gain that you can get from it.
I think of it like allowing myself to have the perception that I want to have, which is that there is always a
Yeah.
win-win and there is a win there for them, even if they choose not to see it, and holding the space that it exists,
Yeah,
which I
right.
think is saying the same thing that
Yeah.
you're saying, just in a
I believe we're
different,
saying the same thing.
different way. Yeah,
Yeah.
holding the space.
So
for the
when there's
win-win.
that difference, and it does take a little bit, maybe even a lot of bit of work on a person's behalf to really understand what is it that they actually want to gain. Because sometimes when we're in a situation like that, we think we know what we want to gain. And even when we think we gain that thing, we're still not happy about it. Go back to last week's podcast, talk about listen to happiness or contentment. But the idea is what is it that you really want? And sometimes you have to get deeper in underneath some of those motivators, to help people understand what is it that you really want.
Well, we may or may not understand what we really want. We also may not be taking the time to ask the other person what they want,
Right.
which I see all the time when I ask clients about, are you saying this is a win-win? Where's the win-win? And they haven't even considered or asked or anything the other person what they want because they're so busy being defended.
Yeah. So let's just back up the bus here for a second. So far, we've talked about kind of mutual compromise is when there's a situation where you have two parties and they both agree to lose lose. Now, that's in perception, by the way, because even when you're losing something, you also must be gaining something because life is
Exactly.
whole like that.
Exactly.
So you could also say, hey, I want to have a win-win solution, but the other party doesn't. And then you kind of address it the way we just talked about. You have to hold the possibility that there's win-win possible for everyone. You hold it out there. The other party doesn't want to actually engage in that, then that's their choice. But don't let that stop you from engaging in the win and also seeing for them the possibility that's there for them.
And that could be a win for them to say that they don't want to see the win because maybe for them, part of their win is standing up for themselves and empowering
Yep.
themselves.
So
It's
you
got
have
to be there
right. So you
somewhere.
have that. Okay, and then you have the level where you may have two parties actually both want to find a win-win solution for things. And in that case, now you have to ask yourself, do both parties feel like they are gaining equitably? Because if they don't feel like they gain the same, then that will breed resentment and that actually turns into a win-lose. So what do we do about that? This is kind of a hierarchy, by the way, too, of development with these things. So what do we do about that? Well, you've actually already mentioned it, Ani. We always go to win, win, win. So when we open up the dynamic, that it's never, ever, ever just two. It's always more than two, at least three people. So, you and I could be in a negotiation, but then we ask ourselves, well, how does that affect the people around us? How does that affect our kids? How does that affect our neighbors? How does that affect our parents?
Our
How does that
business, our
affect our
clients.
business or whatever? Right? There's always at least one additional party. Now, if we come from a perspective that it's win, win, win or gain, 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 and we ask ourselves, how does every party gain? What that does in the psyche is it diffuses that bilateral comparison of you won more than I won. Because now we have a third or fourth or fifth party that we're also considering. And for some reason, what happens inside the psyche is we actually can't even keep track of the equitability of that anymore. And it really diffuses all the attachment to that, again, inequitable experience, perceived inequitability that can lead to resentment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, what do you think of that?
I think that's all really interesting and deep and complex. And I usually prefer to think about it like a win 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 all the time. And if somebody wants to meet me there, great. And if they don't, okay. But I know it's there and they can or don't have to go with me.
Yeah. So, talk about the win 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 for you. Like when you think about it that way all the time.
I do.
Like, how does that work for you? When you're always thinking about it, like what's going on?
Um, I think for me, having that perspective, I recognize that when the conversation looks like it's not there, because it looks like there's some bumps or conflict or something, then I need to ask more questions
Mm,
because I don't have enough information
okay.
about what the other person's trying to accomplish or whatever. And I don't even need to like figure it out. It figures it out on its own. But I need to ask more questions and not be so not assume
Yeah.
that I know exactly what's going on. And just that, I think openness starts to help the other person see that I'm coming from a place where I really care and am considerate. Um, and it changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah, right. When you're asking the person you're negotiating with or the other side of the equation, which could be again within yourself, you could be negotiating with yourself, is what would be a win for you, right? What would be a
Yeah,
gain for you?
exactly. And then bringing that third kind of way in for me again, having approaching it as a win-win-win all the time. Like sometimes it wiggles out when you consider the third win. It just makes the solution really obvious.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to think about it because again,
Sometimes you do.
the decisions we make, we always take this approach of how is it going to, it's going to be a win for us, for whoever else that is and for our whole community, right? We're always kind of asking that question.
It's not like there's never going to be an emotion that, like there's never emotions, by the way, because especially with me around, sometimes I'm going to have an emotion show up. And that gives me an opportunity to do my own deconditioning around whatever it is that's standing in my way from really living the laws and being the person I want to be. And that's fine. It's not like it all happens instantaneously all the time, because I might need to work with my beliefs and stuff. I think, what was occurring to me when you were reading the definition
Yeah.
of compromise was this thing about loss. And I think one of the kind of funny things is when you approach life from a win-win, there's of course a losing of something too, but I think the losing of something is actually of limiting beliefs.
Yeah, right.
You allow yourself to, instead of losing a thing or circumstance, you allow yourself to lose a limitation so you can step into a higher level of consciousness.
Yeah. So do you mean a win-win-win or a win-win? Because you just said when you allow yourself to approach from a win-win, did you mean the 2 or the 3?
Both, Brian.
Okay.
I know you're nutting it down, but for me, I don't think about it like that, because to me, it's always a win-win-win.
Okay.
But there's the opportunity to let go of, rather than lose, I think, say let go of a limiting belief.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
About myself or about the world.
Yeah. Right on board with that.
Circumstance.
And so I'm glad you mentioned the laws, the natural laws and universal laws, because in this kind of this evolution of moving from mutual concession, which is lose-lose, to win-lose, to win-win, to win-win-win, is that the next evolution of this is to realize that winning's an illusion anyway.
Completely.
Right. So this whole thing we've been talking about for however long we've been talking about this, about winning and losing. The universal truth is that winning's just an illusion anyway. Like there actually
100%
is no winning, because as soon as you focus on winning, you automatically also focus on losing, because you're living in the duality.
Yep.
Right. So when we live in a world of duality, as soon as we start focusing on one side of that duality, we automatically get the other side of the duality.
Yep.
So as soon as, if you go back to last week's podcast again, as soon as you start focusing on happy, you can't not focus on sad. I mean, because it's a part of it. So when we transcend the duality, you realize that
there's no
winning's just an illusion.
Yeah.
Right? Winning's an illusion, because all results, all manifestations, everything that we create essentially arises from a field of infinite possibility.
And everything grows, and then everything returns.
Yeah.
So
the winning is just an illusion anyway. So if you can stretch yourself or want to, or imagine about, or meditate on, or whatever kind of stretching into that field of unified potential beyond duality, you'll realize that we're just all here having experience.
And I think it's really valuable to have all of the conversation that we had today, because to just try to sit on your cushion and meditate your way to winning's an illusion when you really don't feel like it's an illusion, right? When you really are attached to something that's happening, there's work to be done there. So go through the progression, try on all of the different aspects, because there's an opportunity there. Not to win, not to lose, but just to experience life and growth.
Yeah, that's it. So if you got something out of today, please send us a note, leave a comment.
Review, share with your friends, all that stuff.
Share with somebody, all that stuff.
We love that you're listening. Thanks so much for joining us.
Let us know what you thought about episode 100.
100. We'll see you on the other side of 100 at 101 next time.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself.
Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.